there, listeners. Welcome to another episode of the Air Station One podcast for you. We got a great one tonight, folks. We have a fantastic one. We have Interview with a Vampire Season 1. That's right. We are doing a review of the Anne Rice book. No, not the book, but the TV show that they did. And it's interesting how they evolved it, how they changed it from the book and from even the movie that we saw almost over 20 years ago. And it's interesting to see this taking of it and this tale of it. And did it work? Did it not? We're here to find out. And we've got a great crew to talk all about it. Of course, my co-host for this night, he doesn't suck. It's Mike Gordon.
Howdy.
So it's awesome. And, I don't know. Have you been around for over 100 years, Mr. Gordon?
Sometimes it feels like it. Certainly, the last 3 years have felt like 50. So
So I totally understand that. The last 3 years were the best decade of my life, as I like to say. So it's a good thing. So it's awesome. And we got a great guest to join us tonight. Of course, let's welcome, Deanna's here tonight. Welcome to the show.
Hey there.
You want to tell everyone a
doing?
little bit about yourself since this is the first time on our show?
Sure, yeah. I'm Dena. I'm avid geek, and my husband and I have a YouTube channel called Drunk and Blurty with Nixon Quat, where we drink, get drunk, and talk about geek stuff and things in our lives.
That's pretty darn awesome. And we'll have a link to that, of course, in our show notes so that people can find you and everything. And
Thank
welcome aboard. And we also have Hanako. Welcome to the show.
Oh, hello.
You want to tell everyone about yourself?
Sure. My name is Hanako, and I am the creator and host of the Phantom Hybrid podcast. And it's just some friends of mine and I. We get together and we recap and review various TV shows and films, mostly in the fantasy genre. We also do a lot of panel work at local conventions such as Dragon Con and Conjuration. So we talk about those fan conventions as well.
Awesome. Well, welcome aboard. I think you guys both saw, through the American Sci-Fi Track webpage, and we put out a call for guests, and we're so very happy that you guys responded to us tonight and everything. It's going to be a ton of fun, and we definitely would love to hear from you guys at home. Please write us feedback at earthstation1.com. Let us know what you guys thought about the series. Did you like it? Did you not? I know the ratings were great for this first season, so somebody must have been watching it, and it was interesting to see the retelling of the stories and such. So it'll be fun to talk about tonight. So we definitely would love to hear from you guys. Also, if you get a chance, folks, as we always love to say, please subscribe to us up on your favorite podcast player, or if you're watching us up on YouTube, thank you so much as always. And please like and subscribe. It's the best way for people to find out about us if you get a chance. We're fairly new up on YouTube, and you can tell by the shine on both my face and Mike Gordon's. So it's a good thing, and definitely would love to hear from you guys at home. Also, if you get a chance, please check out of course, our Patreon. Our Patreon is how we get our money on the show. It's how we get our funds, and how we give you bonus material for a way of saying thank you for subscribing to us up there and supporting the ESO network, which is a show of network shows of over almost 25 shows now. And we also have, different podcasts that post stuff up there. Earth Station DCU does their classics. And we also have Board Silly, which is coming back this month after taking the month of December off. And we also have Earth Station One, Earth Station Who. And yes, folks, the Dragon Con report is coming back in just 2 weeks. That's right, folks. In 2 weeks, we're getting a new episode of the Dragon Con report. I know it's only January, and it's not almost time to start screaming and yelling that Dragon Con is right around the corner. But folks, Dragon Con is right around the corner. So you better get excited.
It'll be here before you know it.
It will. So if you get, become a subscriber to the ESO Patreon, you get those shows early, and you get to hear it earlier than the general public and such. So, why not help and subscribe? All you have to do is go to patreon.com/ESO network. Check it out, folks. Also, let's say hey to our friends over at Tifosi Optical. Tifosi Optical is a sunglass company for all seasons. That's right, folks. It's the middle of winter, but it's bright outside even when you're in the snow or even if you're in the rain, the glare. And also, the sun breaking through the clouds. You need to have sunglasses. And Tifosi Optical is awesome. You can custom make your lenses. You can custom make your frames to whatever color you want. And if you have a prescription, just like I do, you could actually get your prescription into your sunglasses. They will do that for you, folks. And as a way of saying thank you, if you put in Earth Station 1 into the coupon code, you get 10% off your whole order, not just one pair of glasses, not just even if they have sales, off your whole order. It's pretty darn awesome. Go to TifosiOptics.com and tell them Earth Station 1 sent you. All right, Mr. Mike, are you ready to talk about some vampires? Blah,
I am.
blah.
It doesn't seem like it was that long ago. In October of 2021, we did an episode where we honored the 45th anniversary of the novel Interview with the Vampire. And in
I
that
think
one,
that was over. We were at Monsterama for that one.
We were at Monsterama. We did a panel there, and we recorded that panel. And I had reread the book, which I had read when I was let's just say a lot younger, and not right when it came out, but within a few years. And it was an important book to me. I loved the book, and I had reread it for that review that we did, that panel. We also talked about the 94 movie a little bit. And at that time, since the movie had come out with Tom Cruise, there had been some rumblings here and there that we were going to get a remake, that something was going to happen. And then unfortunately, we lost Anne Rice, I think, shortly, after sometime in 2000, in the last couple of years, right?
December.
Yeah.
Yes, December. Thank you. So we weren't sure exactly what was going to happen with the property or whatever. And then boom, May 2020, AMC announces that they've got rights to the whole thing, all the vampire books, all the witches books, they're going to create an Anne Rice universe. And the first thing that's going to come out is going to be a series, Interview with the Vampire. So it's the first time it's going to be a TV series, and it's going to be on AMC. And Dena, we'll start with you. What was your thoughts about, first of all, your history with the book and the property, but what were your thoughts about it finally coming to TV?
So I read by the beginning of the series, I'd read some years ago Interview with Vampire Lestat and Queen of the Damned a couple of times, and I was finally, because we had one movie and it was just that's it, guys. That's all we're getting is this one movie.
Well, we did get Queen of the Damned. We did get Queen of the Damned.
Well, yeah, but see, okay.
Yeah.
So we only count Queen of the Damned for the soundtrack. Nope, we don't. The rest of it, we don't.
I don't remember Stuart. I don't remember
for
Stuart Townsend as Lestat. Nope. I don't know. Nope, never happened.
A whole nope. Just the music. The music was fire. Okay. Yeah. But having a TV show, obviously, you can kind of spread it out a little more than with the movie. So I was definitely her books are so thick. So I was just really excited about that. And just finally, and I thought, okay, is it really coming, or are we going to be sitting here for a few more years and then they say it didn't work out, because that happened before, early on, in the early 2000s, there was supposed to be something and it was nothing.
Oh yeah.
And, so I was very excited.
Especially with what the landscape of television now, 20 years ago, it would have been oh, well, maybe they can do it. I'm not sure. But with everything that's going on now on TV, streaming services, whatnot, certainly AMC's success with Breaking Bad and Walking Dead means that they're probably going to do this show, take it seriously. Right. So, Hanako, what about you? What were your thoughts when you heard the news?
So I have a little bit of a different perspective because I have not read the books.
Interesting.
I have all of Anne Rice's books sitting on my bookshelf, but as avid book readers, we always have that huge to be read pile that we just never seem to get to.
Yes, I don't know what you're talking about. Yes. I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no idea.
So I'm looking at it just from a media standpoint.
Okay.
I watched the 94 film. God, it sounds so weird to say 94.
Yeah, that's
28 30 years ago. Wow. But I remember watching the film back then, and I loved the film, loved some of the casting and the acting, but I always felt like there was something missing from the story. And of course, knowing that this came from a book property, okay, what's the one thing we always complain about? They always leave something out. And so once I heard that they were going to do a TV series, I was like, okay, maybe they can do the proper treatment for this book, because even though I had not read the book, I'm familiar enough with it to know that there were a lot of people who were like, okay, yeah, the movie was good, but it was missing this, it was missing that. So I wanted to see how they were going to do it differently when they brought it to the TV screens. And then knowing that AMC was going to be the ones to bring it to light, I was like, okay, I feel good about this, because as you mentioned, they did a great job with The Walking Dead, and I'm a huge Walking Dead fan. So I was like, okay,
Nice.
if they have it, I feel like they're going to do it right. And I gotta say, I was not disappointed at all. Like, I could not really find anything to complain about with the way that they, with the treatment that they gave it. It was phenomenal, from the casting to the story, and just it. I loved it.
Now, are both of you fans of horror, gothic horror, romantic horror, any kind of like, is that like usually your jam?
Yes and no. Horror. So it's a little strange for me, because there was a period of time, like especially in my 30s, where I really couldn't get into horror. Like, I'm one of those people, I have a very vivid imagination. So things that I read or things that I watch, they stay with me for a long time. So for a period of about 10, maybe 15 years, I couldn't really do horror as much. I could do like some of the vampire stuff, but not so much horror. And then The Walking Dead kind of changed that for me, and it kind of got me back into it. So I'm slowly getting back into it. I do love gothic horror. I do love, the romanticized stuff. But like true horror, like I still can't really do slasher movies. They
Okay.
just,
Yeah.
they seem very corny to me in a lot of ways. And then stories that have a basis in reality, I tend to stay away from those as well, because I'm like, yeah, if this happened in real life already, I don't want no. So, but yeah, vampires, werewolves, those types of things, yes, I would do those all day long.
I'm
Dena, and yourself?
definitely into a lot of urban fantasy, like horror stuff. I Vampires have always been my jam. That's always been the thing that I've focused on the most. But I love horror from way back. Now, I don't watch horror as much because it just all seems like it's that Saw, hostile, like torture porn stuff, and I don't really like that as much, because to me that just puts this vibe out where people just want to try stuff, and it's just like, no, that's I don't dig that. So, but just typical horror, like especially with vampires, anything with a vampire in it, I'm in, I'm ready.
I see you.
Yeah, that's also how, that's one of the ways that Dena and I became friends, because right around the time when we started getting to know each other, like we met each other through an Atlanta Harry Potter group locally, but
Okay.
Twilight and True Blood kind of also
Oh, yeah.
solidified our friendship.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Mike, what about you? What were you, because I know what your thoughts are on the original novel. And I know you don't put the movie that high on your list, but what did you feel like was going to happen with this series?
It's interesting. I was optically, optimistic with it, because a lot of times, when they do the remakes and such, especially after seeing the movie and the other movies they did after it, I was like, oh, what are they going to do? Are they going to ruin it, or what are they going to do? But when I started seeing the casting for this, I was very optimistic. I was like, oh, these are really interesting choices. I liked the actor they had chosen as Louis. I loved
Jacob
him
Anderson.
yeah, he was amazing. He was great in Game of Thrones, and then he was also wonderful in Doctor Who. Those are the only two things I've seen him in. and I enjoyed his performances. So, and I love that they were doing a kind of slightly different take on it, because they moved the timeline up a little bit, because originally in the books it was in the 1800s, and they moved it into the early 1900s instead. And I like the idea of him being a pimp, and or being a owner of a house of ill repute, as
as
we
you
might
say in
want to
New
say.
Orleans.
Exactly. And it was interesting. And then when I saw who they had cast as Lestat, I was like all in and everything. And I was in with both feet. And I was going to say, okay, I'm in for this. And I like who they brought in. I like they brought in Eric as the interviewee, the interviewer. And it almost seemed like this was starting to come together in a really good fashion. And I think the people who were behind it were knowing the original material and actually caring about the story, instead of just putting out schlock. And AMC, like you guys had said, has put out very quality things. Walking Dead, I think outlived itself with what it needed to be and everything. But then you also had Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. You got some really good storytelling off of this.
Prior to that,
And
they had success with Mad Men too. So
yeah, well,
they
exactly.
produced some really good shows.
Exactly. So I had faith in it and was not disappointed at all. I have some qualms on it, but we'll get into that. That's part of the fun of these shows, because you get that stuff. It's kind of cool with that kind of thing. It's pretty awesome when it comes to that.
Yeah, like you guys, I didn't have a problem with it being on AMC at all. I love the book so much, but I'm not really defensive about it. And I think one of the things that has made me such is A, I'm getting older, and B, that I'd seen the movie, and the movie was not, I didn't think that the movie was that bad. In fact, I agree that I thought with Dena that I thought the movie surprised me as how good it was, in terms of it had to cut out a lot, because obviously it's a 2-hour movie, and it's a, as you said, big thick book full of a rich environment, that world that she creates. That, I mean, when Interview with the Vampire was written, was written, it was not meant to be, I think it was just meant to be standalone. But
Yes.
Obviously that, and then Queen of the Damned, and then book after book after book. But when you read Interview with the Vampire, at least when I reread it a couple years ago, I was amazed at how much of the world building started with this book. I mean, there's a lot that goes on when, certainly in the first part of the book, which the first season of the series covers. But the second, it's going to be really interesting to see how they go forward. But yes, they do make changes. And of course, every thing that's adapted is going to make some changes based on the showrunner and the creative people involved. I had no history with Roland Jones as a showrunner, producer, creator at all, so I had no idea what to expect from that perspective. But like Mike said, I like Jacob Anderson. When I heard he was cast, I liked him in Game of Thrones. I liked him in Doctor Who Flux. So I knew he could do it. I knew he could perform as Louis, and Louis's been one of my favorite characters because, as I said, the book is, and I think in the book series, Louis kind of gotten the short shaft because, like in the second book, Lestat becomes like the star of the book series, and
spoilers if you haven't read the book yet.
And of course, the casting of Lestat is important too. I wasn't familiar with Sam Reed. I think I'd seen him in a couple things, but I don't think he'd made any impact for me. So I didn't know what to expect going into this. And my God, was he brought that character to life in a way I didn't think was possible. And of course, the series, this first series, Interview with the Vampire, is really based around their friendship, their relationship. And it becomes a 3-part relationship towards the end, but right in the beginning, if you're not sold on their relationship, this show doesn't work at all. I don't care what else they do. Dena, let's go back to you. What is something that you really liked about the show in that first season?
I think one of the biggest things that I love is because she did write the way she did an interview, and then she kind of retconned a lot of stuff in Vampire Lestat. I think they did a good job of making Louis' unreliable narrator a thing, and like also Lestat from Louis' perspective was poor and he was using him and it was all these things. But in this show, he's showing that no, I have money. I have all this money that he talks about from Vampire Lestat, and I'm living this fashionable life and everything. So I like that they kind of flipped the script on that, because it's like when you read everything that Louis has to say about him and then you see him in this show, you're like, wait a minute, this is nothing like the book. But if you've read Vampire Lestat, then you know that these are the things they've taken these things from that book and kind of put it in interview. And I kind of like that they did that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you read both of those books, you get both of their perspectives. Because if I'm not mistaken, it's been a while since I've read Lestat, but if I'm not mistaken, he does an interview as well, right? And he's going to set the record straight of what actually his point of view happened. So this series is not just an adaptation of that first book. It's taking into account the things that we learn about Lestat's point of view. Although I'd say Louis is still pretty much the main character in this show, at least to start with, I think, in this series. Yeah. I mean, obviously he's the one being interviewed, right?
Right.
So Hanako, what about you? What did you like about the first season? Because you didn't have anything to compare it to, right?
Nothing except for the first movie.
Okay, right.
The movie. But I think one of the things that really stood out for me was Jacob Anderson's portrayal of Louis. Okay. Because as much as I love Brad Pitt and I did love his version of Louis, one of the things that bothered me about that portrayal is you have Louis as this really tortured soul, but you really have no background as to why he is this way. And it just, like I said, it always felt like something was missing to me when I watched the movie. But in this show, you get to see more of his familial background, which I understand they do talk about in the books. And of course, they didn't really touch on that in the movie, but you get to see his relationship with his mother, his brother, his sister, and how close of a bond he had with them. And then when things start falling apart and he gets turned by Lestat, it's like you get to see things from his perspective in a very unique way, because as he's telling this interview, he's telling you how Lestat seduced him. But at the same time, it's kind of like it's almost like he's contradicting himself, because he's talking about how much he was so into Lestat and how Lestat was his everything. But you see throughout the course of the show, he never really tells Lestat this. So it was just an interesting dynamic with his character, as far as like this person who was so in love with this being and so tortured that he gave up his humanity, his mortality, to be with this man, and then to always kind of keep Lestat dangling with I love you, you're my everything. And he's just kind of like, oh, okay. It was that whole portrayal, his torturedness. I've said it from the moment I saw it in the trailer, that scene in the confessional, he needs to win an award for that, because it was so powerful. Like, I was shaking watching that scene, just with how raw his anguish was and how tortured he was. And it was just basically like, kill me now. I don't want to be tortured by this man. But then at the same time, when he walks in the room, you can't help but be mesmerized by him and fall into his trap. So Louis' whole dynamic through the whole show just kind of captivated me, because it's like, he loves Lestat and he hates Lestat as well. And that was just interesting. That was just a really interesting thing to see him fight with himself on.
It was go ahead.
I was gonna say, I just wanted to hit on that, what you were saying. So the reason why it's hard to kind of pinpoint how Louis is feeling in the movie is because they literally have a throwaway line where they say that he lost his wife and child, and then they just kind of like ignore the rest of it.
Right.
Which that's not it. That's not the story.
Right.
So you just kind of like, oh, okay, move on, and you don't even think about that and why he's so depressed and whatever. versus him actually having, like you said, familial relationships and things going awry and all that stuff. So that's probably why you were like, I don't get it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was interesting too, because he came across as a true abused victim in this. And, because he was literally dropped from thousands of feet
Oh
up.
God.
And it was, and then, but he still loved the man and basically he kept on coming back to Lestat. And and it was just interesting to see that portrayal of him. And it it was so well done and everything. And the torture he went through with his brother before he got turned, and how his brother was touched, as they said. And it was so interesting to see. And in the books they did go on into the family a little bit, but nothing to the detail that the show went into. They touched on it more, and he kept in touch with the family even longer than he did in the books and everything. And you guys hit it right on the head when you said, you know that this is all from Louis's point of view. This is all Louis, and from his talking about it. But what I got out of watching this TV show almost felt like it was a sequel to the original movie.
It did feel that way.
Yeah, that he's come back to the same interviewer that he talked to back
Oh,
in
right.
in the 80s
Yeah.
or early 90s. And hey, these are he said, these were the cassettes that you recorded me on. Now I'm going to give you the full story type thing.
Right. This is not, the original interview was something that either you read in the book or whatever, but we're doing a new interview now.
Exactly. This is the full thing. This is everything.
Yeah.
I'm more together. My head is in the right place for me to tell you all this stuff. What I told you before was an angst-filled story and everything. And that's what we got from Louis in the movie. So it almost felt like that. And
I think there was also a moment where they mentioned regarding the first interview years ago that there was some kind of incident that happened between them, which stopped the interview and kind of put them on their separate paths. And that made me think about the end of the film where he actually bites Daniel, doesn't he?
Yeah.
He doesn't
Yeah, he
in the
does.
film,
Yeah.
but in the he like jacks him up and
Yeah.
like scares him.
Okay.
And he thinks he's gonna get like bitten, and he's just like panics, and then he runs out.
But
I think in the
Lestat
books
actually
I think in the books he does get bit.
he
Right?
does,
He does get turned.
and
Yeah.
it shows, he shows the scar that he got bit
Right.
in the show.
Yeah.
And it was really, really well done. And I thought that part was okay. So this is the true story now. You're hearing this. And I enjoyed that part. The part, and you might crucify me at home, or you guys might crucify me now. Claudia, I loved it in the movie or in the books where she was a child and she got turned as a child. Here she's 15 or 14 or 15. And I didn't believe it as much because and they handled it. I liked it, that she just looked young for her age and stuff. And there are people in their early 20s who still look like they're, 13 or 14. So that was believable. But I loved the tortures that she was going through in the book and in the movie, being the little kid with an adult soul. And that she could never, no matter what she did, she cut her hair, or if she, tried, putting makeup on, she was still a 5 or 6-year-old who, was a 30-year-old or 40-year-old inside that little body. And that must have been hell for her. And it was more believable. And that also made it more believable why she went insane or, became so hateful against.
Yeah. I'm going to address this too, because I totally disagree. I think that I'm glad they upped her age in the series, because Claudia in the books, I think the movie did it really well. And in the book, I think Anne Rice did it really well, but it was kind of like one note. Like, she's trapped in a young girl's body. That's driving her insane. In the book, spoiler alert, she dies. And that's it. And we move on, and it's she's used as a tool, as a prop, as a weapon between the two of them in the book.
Yeah.
And this series allows her to become her own character, and I desperately hope she survives the second season, because I think I think this character is a lot more interesting. I mean, the kid trapped in the vampire trapped in a kid's body, we've now seen with like the Let Me In or Let the Right One In movies, and it's been done. It's been done now. I mean, Anne Rice might have like really like opened that door, but I think it's been played around with so much now that I don't think there's anything new to add to it. Whereas this Claudia, I don't know what's going to happen, and I'm very much interested in her that way. So that's my take on the Claudia controversy, we'll say. What do you guys think? What's your play on that?
I actually enjoyed the way that they told the story in the series, because kind of like what Mike was saying, we've seen the child trap before, and there's not really much you can expound on with that, especially in a show, without getting in trouble, let's say it like that. But you take this character and you make her prepubescent or pubescent, and you stick her in that body forever with those emotions of trying to go from being a teenager to a young woman, and having the desires of a maturing young woman, and not really being able to deal with that, not just the emotions and the maturity level, but also the sexual awakening. How do you mature and be grown when you look constantly like a child? I mean, even though that's the 1920s, and that wasn't something that was
They were
as
getting
taboo.
married back then.
Right.
Yeah.
But still,
Right.
thinking about it for this day and age,
True
like
enough.
there's so much now with relationships and age differences that people think about now that we didn't think about back then. Back when I was in high school, wasn't anything for a 15, 16-year-old, sophomore, junior, senior to be dating someone in college, because you're all still part of that same peer group for the most part. It was not a big deal. But now something like that is a huge deal. And so to watch her struggle through that, and to try to navigate that and not being able to do so, that was so interesting to me, because you could feel her frustration. You could feel the tension that she had. And then, of course, her having to be stuck in this body without ever being able to really find love in a proper way, and also having to live in the house with Lestat and Louis.
Oh man,
would drive anyone insane.
My two
Like,
dads.
I'm stuck in this body. I can never find love, and yet I have to hear you guys going at it all the time. That would drive me nuts. So I actually love the way that they put that in the show and made that her struggle, and to have to watch her try to navigate that. She's trying to act out like there are times when she's acting out like a child, but there are other times when she's really being manipulative, and she's really being smart about how she plays Lestat, and how she kind of maneuvers that relationship. I thought it was fascinating to watch, and Bailey Bass was just amazing.
Yeah,
she was great as a
was
role.
amazing.
And for the record, she's 19. She was born in 2003, so she is a teenager playing a teenager. Now, granted, there's a few years there, but it's not like she's a 30-year-old trying to play a teenager that we see on the CW a lot, right? But Dena, what about you? What are your take on this? Because you're familiar with the books and whatnot, and how rich of a character that is. Although I think even Anne Rice was kind of like, damn, I killed her off too soon. Because didn't she come back as a ghost or something throughout?
Yes.
Like
She haunted Lestat a lot, because he was guilty of how he treated her and stuff like that. But like, so it was hard for me to get over the fact that they upped her age. I understood the reasons they did it, some of what Hanako said, but also the laws with working with children. They could not have a child working that the time periods, the overnight and all that stuff.
Right.
But the thing I love this the story and the nuances of Claudia as a little child. She was 5. She's 5 years old and she's a killer and she's going through all these adult feelings in a 5-year-old body. I love that. But like, you can't put that on TV. That just does not work. Not a 5-year-old, not because she was very adult. Like, in the things she would say to Louis, the way she would speak to him, she would talk to them as if they were lovers. Like, you can't put that, a kid
Right.
doing that.
I think the movie does it about as well as you could do it.
Yeah,
away with
right,
doing it.
exactly.
Then it was
And
borderline.
she was 11, 10 and 11. So she was even older than the 5-year-old. You know what I mean? I do think, however, making so Bailey Bassett is young, she is a teenager, but I don't think she looked young enough to be 14. And so it kind of like her like running off and doing her thing and going to find herself for those years she was away. To me, she didn't pass as a child or young enough to be, this, she looked grown to me. So it was just really kind of hard for me to be like, oh my God, she's not safe. Oh my God, go find her. I was like, she's an adult. Let her go do what she wants to do. But she did play, and by the end, she was fantastic. I enjoyed her so much. And so I got over it.
You had to, because if you didn't, you would have been taken out of the story completely.
Yeah.
And everything.
As rough as it might be during the course of the season, by the end, when everything's going down and she's kind of working both of them against each other, and she's an active participant in this 3-way war or relationship. And she's holding her own, and I think she's fascinating. And like I said, I don't know what the plans are for her, but I hope they don't do what the books do and kill her off really quickly, because I think that'd be a shame. She's such a good character.
It'll be very interesting
although
to see
they do kind of lend. Well, we don't know. I mean, the series takes place, at least the interview part, in sometime in the future, I think, right? I don't think it's present, right?
2016, I think it's supposed
to
be.
Okay, it's 2016. Okay.
Yeah.
But it is in
No, I think it's a little bit after that, because they actually mentioned the pandemic.
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
You know what? You're
right.
right. They do mention the pandemic. So probably 2020, 2021, maybe.
Yeah, probably.
And there's a lot we don't know. Like, we don't know, like Mike pointed out, we don't know what has happened to Louis that makes him want to redo this. Daniel, as the interviewer, has a lot going on with him. I mean, obviously he's suffering from this disease. The easy way out, of course, would be to just join the rest of the vampires, but I don't think he wants to do that. And so we get all of that dynamic. But I think, to me, the beauty of the show is that, because the movie, even though I've said that, the Claudia stuff was handled pretty well, it still felt, especially in the relationship between Louis and Lestat, it feels restrained. It feels like it really, it's not cool to like develop these characters the way that Anne Rice does, or the way it really should be in an adaptation. And this series, I mean, you can't say that it holds back in any way, right?
No,
it doesn't hold back in
it doesn't, Mike, and that's
it doesn't hold back in the sexuality, it doesn't hold back in the violence and the gore. I mean, you guys were talking about, horror fans, whatever. There's a lot of gore in this series. There's some really disturbing images in this series. Anything in particular that you wanted to point out that was disturbing to you? Like, oh my God, I can't believe that.
The whole fight, or I like to call it the whooping, the whooping, because I don't know how y'all feel about cursing. It took me, I'm still not over that, because as horrible as Lestat could be in any iteration, that is something that I feel like, I don't think he would have ever done that. Not like that. Like, he just, and it was so violent. But it worked for this version of Lestat, I feel like, just because I don't know, it just seemed like something this version of Lestat could do. I just don't think book Lestat would have done it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It just was really hard to watch. And I only watched that episode twice because it was hard.
Same.
Same.
Same. It was, I don't know. There was like such an animalistic feel to Lestat
Mhm.
during that scene. And it's like, you understand that he's upset, but it's almost like he left his body and there was something else taking its place. And I mean, I had to continuously pause that scene because I was like, oh my God, I can't believe. Okay,
Yeah.
I got to take a breath. I got to take a breath. It was a hard scene to get through, but I think it was also one of the most powerful scenes in the series because even after that, yes, Louis had his, he went away for a couple of years. They ignored Lestat, but you saw Lestat was his persistence wore Louis down, and what happened? He goes right back to him, and it was just one of those where it's like, what?
That gets
But I
into what I
think
was
that was,
mentioning earlier about the abused victim.
but also I think it was it shows the hold that Lestat had over Louis, even in the times when Louis is in the interview talking about how much he wanted to leave him and how much he was done with him, but he, as he told Daniel, he was like, stop asking so many direct questions, let the story seduce you as I was seduced. And you really
Good
feel
God,
it
good line too.
after
Yeah.
that.
But I loved
Because
how Daniel got called him on some of Louis'
Yep.
BS too,
Yep.
and everything, which
Well, yeah,
was
I mean,
really awesome.
Louis is portraying this as an abusive relationship, and to a large extent it is. But there's something about the series and the way that the relationship is depicted that we see that for sure, but I don't, that part of that second book where Lestat's telling his side of the story bleeds into this telling, because I don't think we are completely hating Lestat all the time. Like, we understand, and is he redeemable, do you think?
That's a good question.
I think by the 7th episode, when they're like, before everything goes down and they're on the balcony, I think you can really see just how much of a heart that he really does have, because he knows what's going to happen. We find out later. And he's still looking at Louis like how much he loves him and how much, he just really wanted this to work. And obviously Louis is looking at him the same, like, I just wish this would have worked out. So I do think he's redeemable. I just think that the way that they kind of like put him in his place and put all the rules on him and just kind of like shoved him in a box and you got to do this and you got to do that. I don't think that's the way you get him to be a better person, or a better vampire. The
No,
way
I
they did, I think they
completely
made it
agree.
worse.
Them putting all the rules on him made it even worse because he
Yeah.
was going to explode. But it was also interesting because he was plotting against them, and Claudia was seeing right through it and being able to, because he had turned the singer into a vampire behind their backs. And, Claudia found out, saw through that even. And it was neat how they were showing the different scenes and each one of them spying on the other. And
Yeah.
that was just, it was
Although that's
interesting.
interesting, because even though Claudia sees that and reports back to Louis and everything, although she doesn't tell him everything, she's only seeing one side of it too. And I don't think she realizes that, yeah, Lestat's doing some pretty bad things, but where he's coming from and why he's doing them, she's wrong about. Like, he's not just being evil to be evil, right? I mean, he's insecure, he needs somebody, he loves Louis, he doesn't want to lose him, he's scared he's going to lose him. He's doing a lot of these things out of that. Now, that's not excusing his actions, but his reasons are not what they think. They think that he just likes torturing them, right? And like being in control, which he kind of does. But I mean, then we find out a little bit about the person who sired him, a little bit. He's mentioned. So I imagine that's going to be, that's going to come up as well. All right. So, man, I knew this was going to go fast. What do we want to see in season 2? Like, this is the setup for season 1. I think we all agree was amazing what they've done here. Of course, those of us who read the books kind of have an idea of what's going to happen in season 2, but not really. Hanako, since you haven't read the book, what do you want to see out of season 2?
I need to know more about Armand.
Here we
go.
Nice mention, Armand.
And it came out of left field because I kept saying there's something about him, but I don't think I ever put it together that that's who he was supposed to be. And then when he revealed it, I was like, duh. So now we get this at the end, and you get Louis introducing to Daniel, meet Armand, the love of my life. I was like, oh, I need to hear more about this story. And I need to know what Lestat is going to say about it, because of course Lestat isn't dead, even though they killed him. Like, Louis purposefully left him in such a way that he could be revived. So it's kind of
we know he's not coming. We know he's coming back.
Yeah, so it's like, again, the whole contradiction. Like, Louis went through all of these paces to kill Lestat, and then in the end, you left him in such a way that you knew he would be able to survive.
And
so
I love
like
how Eric called how Daniel called him on that. It's like, hello, even couldn't you see through this?
Right.
That was awesome.
So I want to know more about Armand, and I want to know how Lestat is going to fit into that story. I
am glad we got Armand in there. That's awesome.
That's
Dena, what about you?
Yeah, so actually I would like to see, because they go to the theater vampire, I can never say it right, theater the vampire, and all that stuff in Paris.
They go to
so
France.
They do end up, meeting Armand for the first time, and all the things that go along with that, and that trigger the things with Claudia. So I'm looking forward to that. But I hope what they do is combine, like they kind of have been, Vampire Lestat with that, so we can see both sides of that situation, because just seeing it from Louis' point of view is fine, but I like when they add that Lestat, was intermingled in that whole situation. It changes the dynamic of the story, and I hope they do that. I really do. Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing. Like, I want to see kind of like because I mean, otherwise he won't be in the story, right? Like, he won't even be there because he's not with them.
In the book, it's a surprise when Lestat comes back and sees them, and then we get sort of his explanation as to what happened. Do you think that maybe in season 2 we can see his progress as it's happening, so it's not a surprise to us that he's back?
Right. I think that's yeah. That's what I'm hoping, so that we can see everything. Because when Louis does see him there, he only sees one portion of the story. He doesn't know what's going on, why he's there, none of that. So I hope they do it from, like I said, from the point of view of Lestat, why he was there, what really happened, that kind of stuff. Instead of just trying to make it book by book every 2 seasons, just go ahead and mix it together, and
I'll be very curious
Mike,
to see where they go with it.
I'm
going to be very curious, because I'm have read this book multiple times. I know that, after, what they did to, Lestat, Claudia and Louis go off and try to find the old vampires to see, because they basically go to the old country and everything, because it was interesting with the whole thing with Claudia and her meeting the other vampire, and who did some very nasty things to her. And it'll be very interesting to see, because they don't meet some very nice vampires when they first go to Europe and everything.
Right. That would be cool to see some of that stuff.
Yeah, because they're very beastie. They're very the original vampires they did in the early 1900s.
They're not civilized.
Exactly, the not civilized ones.
They're more like the Nosferatu. In my head, I always feel like they're more Nosferatu.
Well, that's what I pictured vampires. It when I read the books and everything, and that's what they ran into. And so I would like to see some of that, and then them finally getting to the theater and meeting Armand and meeting, the rest of the troupe, and, them going through and finding out how they live with, and the humans are paying to see them, do perform and everything like that. And
Mhm.
it's going to be and like you said, I would like to see Lestat tied a little bit more because the actor is too good to be missing from the next season.
He
Right,
was
exactly.
phenomenal.
Yeah, he was.
Phenomenal.
And so I definitely want to see what happens with that. And going forward, because then is it gonna be after that, are they gonna do like you had mentioned, Dina, that is the third season then going to be, you know, in Vampire Lestat and going forward and then Queen of the Damned and then Tales of the Body Thief and then wherever they decide to go from there. Because I stopped reading after Tales of the Body Thief because it was
Yeah,
That's what
because
I did too.
I'm still stuck on Mem Knock the Devil. I just can't get through it.
yeah.
I understand.
Because it almost felt
Um,
like the vampires became a superhero team after that. It was like,
yeah, exactly. Regarding with the continuation of the AMC sort of Anne Rice, what universe are they calling it? The Dark Universe or
Immortal
something like that?
universe.
Immortal
Thank you.
universe, yeah.
because they have the
So
witch show on right now.
we've had a premiere of Mayfair Witches. Have
Yeah.
either of you checked out that yet?
I've watched
Yeah.
both episodes. I think the
Okay,
second
I have-
episode released last week. So
I have not seen it yet. I did not read those books. I know nothing about that sort of side of Anne Rice's universe. What real quick overall, what were your thoughts on that? On Mayfair Witches?
Well,
Is
I
it good? Is it
actually,
worth it?
I think it's pretty good. I feel like if you have not read the books, it's definitely an eye catcher. It's definitely going to catch your interest. I've only read half of the first book because I'm still getting through it. And I'm already mad at some of the changes. So I did that to myself. But if I had just watched it just by itself without trying to read the book, I think it's pretty good.
okay. Yeah, the first episode was interesting enough to keep my attention. I'm not very sold on Alexandra Daddario yet. The second episode was a little bit better. The pacing moved along a little bit faster and I kind of liked her better in this. So, I'll give it another couple of episodes just to see how I like her, but I'm very interested in the story so far. The second
Okay.
episode really kind of pulled me in a little bit more.
Let me just ask you this in the spoilers. Is there anything in that series that remotely you think ties into the vampire series?
Oh yeah. If they do what I think they're gonna do, Storyville might be a connection since that's where Louis kind of started out in the show, and that actually may have been where they got to use Storyville from Mayfair Witches. So that might be
Gotcha.
so we'll see what they do in the show though, because who knows, they might not even talk.
Well, we do know that we are getting an 8-episode second season, and we don't know when it's going to premiere. So who knows when it's going to premiere? Hopefully this year, but we don't know. Could be next year.
It'll
Yeah,
probably be next year. These shows
Yeah.
and these long hiatuses, but I mean, I kind of understand it because a lot of them don't start filming until they get a definite we're being renewed, because what we've been seeing the last couple of weeks in media, even the shows that have been announced as renewed, they're getting canceled now because of network changes, ownership changes, that sort of thing. So yeah, I would, if we got anything in 2023, I would be really surprised.
Yeah, I don't know. I know that Anne Rice also, I think, had a Egyptian mummy series too. So I don't know if that's going to be included in this as well. So it'd be really interesting to see. But I'm definitely down for season 2 of Interview with the Vampire, and hopefully we can have you both back when that finally does air to talk all about that and see how we still feel about the series. So
absolutely.
Thank you guys so much. We're going to be right back, and then we're going to get ready to close out the show.
Cool. And this is the part where we talk to our YouTube folks. So hi YouTube people, how are you? All right. Question for you guys. If you would you want to see them do a crossover between the witches and the vampires?
I think it would be very interesting to see that happen.
Cool.
Yeah, I don't know if did they cross over in the books at all?
Yeah, they eventually cross over. The books as you get further into the Mayfair Chronicles, it's like the first 3 books, and then they start crossing over, I think, with the vampires and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm game for it, but I mean, I guess that means that I wasn't really like excited by the Witches series. So I'm not like, do I have to watch this now just to keep up with the whole thing? Or
It's Anne is good at building worlds and like lineages and stuff of that nature. And the way she has built this freaking Mayfair family up, just that alone will catch your interest. Just knowing the family alone, so I really hope they do this show well, because that alone is enough to keep you interested. That book is like 1,000 pages in paperback.
Which is why it's
So
still sitting on my to be read.
That's why I'm like only halfway through, and half of that is lineage.
It keeps some of the other material down, like in place, right? Like it's really good for that. That sounds huge.
Yeah.
And then some of the casting in the show, like Harry Hamlin as Uncle Cortland, I just giggle every time he's on the screen because he's so different from anything I've seen him in before. He's like this kind of Southern gentleman, but he has some ulterior motives, and some just don't seem quite right about him. But I love his character so far. I'm like, okay, what kind of devious stuff are you about to get into? I'm just waiting for it.
Nice.
That's pretty
Have
awesome.
you checked it out, Mike? I'm sorry, I didn't even ask, but I didn't think you
It's
had.
okay. It's okay. You can ignore me all night. It's okay.
Have you watched it?
Yes, I have.
Oh, I did not know.
Yeah, it's okay. And it was a lot of fun. The first episode kind of left me like, okay, let's see what happens. But after the second one, it was like, okay, I want to watch more and see where this goes.
Especially with what happens at the end of the second episode. I was like, oh, okay.
I know.
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh. Ooh.
That brought me back in. I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. And that's what you want and everything. I agree what you said though about the actress on it, because the only thing I had ever seen her in also was, I think, the movie she did with The Rock, with the San Andreas Fault or something like that.
I only remember her from Percy Jackson. So
yeah, she's been in a lot of different things. She's popular.
Yeah. But it's like, she's got great eyes. I'll say that.
But they just constantly bugged out that's what's driving me insane. Like,
right,
the eyes on Deirdre.
Yeah,
the contact lenses. Yes.
So that's a problem. They did not have to do that.
Right. Like, my daughter was saying that tonight when we were watching it. She was like, those contacts are bugging me. Like, they could have found a different way. They could have gotten a different color. They could have done something, but it's like so obvious her eyes are not her eyes.
Yeah.
It's just it's very distracting when you're watching the scenes with Deirdre's character. It's kind of like her eyeballs look so
fake.
Yes, it's just
they almost look like she's dead, like a dead body when your eyes go washed out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's I don't like it.
Yeah. They could have done something. I mean, I'm sure they have the budget to get better contacts.
Or just
go to Dragon Con and get better contacts than that.
And they have a better budget than we do. Come on, folks. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys. And thank you, YouTube listeners, for staying with us. We do appreciate you guys. That's awesome. All right. Let's close up the show now. All right. That's going to be another episode of the Earth Station One podcast. Thank you, everyone, for listening and joining us tonight. This has been a ton of fun. Dena, thank you so much. Anything you want to promote or shout out about?
Just Google Drunken Blerdy, and it's Blerdy, BLERDY, Black and Nerdy. That's me, Drunken Blerdy.
All right. You were awesome. Thank you. And
were you sober throughout this whole thing?
I was,
no comment,
I wasn't sure if you guys mind if I was drinking, so I just had water.
well, next time we'll have to drink up.
Oh, exactly. It's not like when we do the Dragon Con report and we mispronounce names and stuff, and every time you do that, you have to take a shot. So
that one is almost it's a requirement. So
yes, exactly. Hanako, thank you so much. Thank you. You've been awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Anything you want to promote or shout out about?
Sure. You can find me on the Phantom Hybrid podcast at www.phantomhybrid.com. We are on all of the podcast streaming platforms. We also have a YouTube channel where you can watch the video version of our audio. Just look for Phantom Hybrid podcast on YouTube. Yeah, and find me on all social medias at Phantom Hybrid.
Awesome. And we will be linking to all that for both of you guys, in our show notes and everything. So people, listen to these wonderful ladies. They're awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mike, we've made it through another one, my friend.
We did. And as always, it's my pleasure.
Anything you want to shout out about, sir?
I do. Our good friend Justin Gray, who is a writer and publisher of self-publisher of comics, has a new Kickstarter with a new comic happening. It is called Hope, and it is a sci-fi horror neo-Western comic with art by Branko Djokovic. I think I'm pronouncing that right. I hope so. Anyway,
Drink.
it is, yeah, exactly. It's a neo-Western. It's by Justin Gray. It's called Hope, but do not mistake the title. I mean, it looks like there's still like edgy, graphic violence depicted in this series. It looks grim. So it'll be really interesting to see what the whole story is about. I'm already signed up for the Kickstarter, and I recommend you guys do too. We'll have a link in the show notes so you can check it out.
That is awesome. Awesome. Justin does some great work, folks.
Every time.
He does some amazing work. All right, my shout out real quick. It's award season, and I wanted to congratulate our friend Weird Al Yankovic. He actually, his project Weird actually won 2 Critics' Choice Awards. Daniel Radcliffe actually won Best Actor in a limited series or TV movie. And Weird actually won Critics' Choice winner for the best movie made for television. So congratulations, Mr. Yankovic. See? He's not
It's a fun movie.
It is a fun movie. I just actually watched it with a friend the other day who hadn't seen it, and it was like, and she was like, "Is that Harry Potter?" It's like, yes, it is.
No, it's Weird Al. What are you talking about?
Exactly. And of course she said to me, "I didn't know his father was the basis for Amish Paradise." It's like, really? So no.
Everything is true in the document. It's a documentary, really.
Of course it's true. He was the real Weird Al was actually killed back in 87. So
absolutely. Rest in peace.
Rest in peace, Weird Al Yankovic. So it's just it's an imposter, like there's an imposter Paul McCartney, so
yeah,
it's always true. So thank you guys for joining us. We do appreciate you. Join us next week when we are going to be talking all about science. That's right, folks.
Science.
That's right. We are looking at science in 2023. What do we have going on and such? And so our science geeks are joining us again for next week's episode. It should be a ton of fun. And we just, it's always great to be able to talk about science. And it's, a neat
a lot
thing.
happening.
Oh, there is a ton happening. And thank you everyone who's been subscribing to our channel up on YouTube. I know it's still brand new and we're got to start promoting it more and more and more. So definitely check us out, our Station One on YouTube. Definitely
like and share.
Exactly. And thank you, Ashley's dad, for leaving us more feedback. We do appreciate it. So it is always awesome. And he left us some feedback for us over on talking on us about the episode we did on Wednesday. So it was a lot of fun when we reviewed that. It's always fun when we can talk a little bit of atoms and have Ashley with us. And thank you, Ashley's dad, for actually telling her to actually, watch the show, so she was able to be on it with us. So it's always cool with that. So definitely, folks, would love to hear from you guys. As always, please leave feedback at earthstation1.com. And we couldn't do this without you. Remember, Earth Station One can be found wherever fine podcasts are found. We're even up there, so it's pretty cool.
We're there too.
We're there too with the best of them. Now, Earth Station One could also be found in video format, like we mentioned, up on YouTube. Please subscribe and tell all your friends about us. On behalf of myself, Mike Faber, Mr. Mike Gordon, Dena, and Hanako, thank you so much. I appreciate you all for joining us. Thank you everyone for watching and for listening. We will see you here next time on the Earth Station One podcast. Peace, and we will see you soon. And we are done.
Yay.
Bye. Bye. We miss you already. Bye.